Hi, automotive enthusiasts. Welcome to Boost Bureau, where today we're diving into one of the most fascinating motorcycles to ever hit the open road. The Aprilia Tuono V4, the naked superbike that has managed to rattle even the most confident competition. This isn't just another street machine with stripped fairings and a snarling exhaust. It's the bold decision by Aprilia to take their championship-winning V4 superbike engine, pull it out of the race-prepped RSV4, and drop it into a naked chassis built for the street. The result was not just another motorcycle. It was a category-defining weapon that blurred the line between practicality and pure racing adrenaline. When you think about motorcycles that shape the naked class, you might first imagine the usual heavy-hitting suspects: Ducati's Monsters, KTM's Super Dukes, or BMW's S-Series Nakeds. But what Aprilia did with the Tuono V4 was different. It wasn't about comfort, it wasn't about restraint, and it certainly wasn't about building a friendlier version of a superbike. Instead, Aprilia asked a bold question. What if we gave riders nearly all the fury of a race bike, wrapped it in just enough civility to be street legal, and dared them to handle it? That's the DNA of the Tuono V4, and that's what we'll be exploring in detail today. Over the next stretch, we'll peel back the story of how this machine came to be, how it took on rivals in a crowded and competitive market, and why its reputation as the bike that scares the competition isn't just clever marketing. It's grounded in real performance and rider experience. We'll talk about the decision-making inside Aprilia that pushed them to gamble on this configuration, the engineering that turned a terrifying idea into a controllable masterpiece, and the lasting impact it had on the naked superbike arms race that followed. This story isn't just about specs and horsepower. It's about the philosophy of motorcycling at the highest level, about how fear and thrill are two sides of the same coin, and about why the Tuono V4 remains such an important benchmark. So settle in, because this isn't just a history lesson. It's a journey through risk, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of riding emotion. By the time we're done, you'll understand why Aprilia's Tuono V4 isn't just another naked sport bike. It's the naked superbike that still makes its rivals nervous to this day. The Aprilia Tuono V4's roots stretch back to a decision that looked reckless on paper, but made perfect sense for a brand that lived and breathed racing. Instead of building a naked bike as an afterthought, Aprilia chose to anchor it around the V4 engine that had already proven itself on the world's toughest circuits. That move wasn't just unusual. It was nearly unprecedented, and it set the tone for what would become a machine both admired and feared. Microstory, a radical transplant from the racetrack. When Aprilia's engineers looked at the RSV4's heart, a compact and ferocious V4 engine, they realized it had the potential to change the naked bike segment entirely. Rather than softening its character for street duty, they chose to preserve its sharpness, merely tweaking ergonomics and gearing for real-world use. The result was a motorcycle that felt more alive, more demanding, and more connected to its racing heritage than anything else in the category. Riders quickly discovered that the Tuono wasn't simply a street version of the RSV4. It was a motorcycle with its own personality, born from audacity rather than compromise. Context digest. In the early 2010s, the naked segment was exploding, but many competitors leaned toward accessibility. Ducati's Monster offered style and attitude. Triumph's Street Triple gave balance and agility. KTM's early Super Dukes brought brute force. Yet each still made concessions toward daily usability. Aprilia ignored those compromises and gambled on thrill first, comfort second. That choice ensured the Tuono stood out instantly. Microstory, handling chaos with precision. Anyone could drop a superbike engine into a street chassis, but what made the Tuono exceptional was how it remained rideable. Aprilia employed electronics directly derived from MotoGP, traction control, wheelie control, and launch systems to keep the V4's immense power usable. Instead of neutering the engine, they wrapped it in layers of intelligence. Riders described it as wild but manageable, like taming a predator rather than neutering it. This balance is what transformed the Tuono from a gimmick into a benchmark. Reflection bridge. The genius of the Tuono wasn't just in raw horsepower, but in Aprilia's confidence to trust riders with something untamed yet controllable. That philosophy deserves a closer look at the culture inside Aprilia that gave rise to such a decision. Microstory. A company defined by racing. Aprilia, though smaller than Japanese giants and Italian rivals like Ducati, carved its identity in competition. With dozens of Grand Prix wins and a reputation for building agile, finely tuned machines, its engineers were conditioned to think differently. The Tuono emerged as an extension of that DNA. It wasn't about building the broadest-selling naked bike. It was about showcasing that even in the stripped-down world of street fighters, Aprilia would lead with racing spirit. This mindset set the Tuono apart from its inception. Context digest. The V4 configuration itself was bold. Where most naked bikes relied on twins or inline fours, Aprilia's compact V4 offered the perfect blend of torque and top-end power, plus a soundtrack unlike anything else. It gave the Tuono a distinct voice in a crowded field, rasping, growling, and unmistakably exotic. This character wasn't accidental. It was cultivated to ensure riders felt something visceral every time they twisted the throttle. Microstory. The myth of too much bike. When the Tuono debuted, skeptics argued it was excessive. Who needed a naked bike with that much power? But those who rode it found something surprising. With upright ergonomics, a wide handlebar, and the sophisticated electronics, the Tuono actually worked on real roads better than many softer machines. It scared riders, yes, but it also seduced them. That paradox became its defining identity, and it earned the respect of reviewers who initially doubted it. Reflection bridge. The Tuono proved that excess, when refined, could be a virtue. But as it entered the market, the bigger question emerged. How would its competitors respond to such a disruptive force? Context digest. The naked bike category wasn't static. Ducati sharpened the Street Fighter, KTM unleashed its later Super Duke 1290, and BMW brought out the S1000R. Each brand had to reckon with the shadow the Tuono cast. In some ways, Aprilia forced everyone else to elevate their offerings. What began as one company's daring gamble transformed into an industry-wide escalation. Microstory, living with the beast. For owners, the Tuono was both a badge of honor and a daily challenge. Riders described commuting on it as overkill but addictive. Every throttle twist brought a reminder that you were astride a machine bred for speed, not convenience. And yet, this impracticality became part of its charm. Owning a Tuono wasn't about rational choices. It was about embracing the thrill, even when it meant fuel stops came too often or maintenance demanded devotion. Microstory, the culture of respect. On the street and track, the Tuono quickly built a reputation. Other riders, whether on Ducatis, KTMs, or Japanese nakeds, recognized it instantly. Its distinctive exhaust note announced its arrival before it came into view, and its reputation as a handful ensured it commanded respect at bike meets. It wasn't just another naked bike, it was the naked superbike. That reputation carried weight, turning owners into evangelists for Aprilia's vision. Reflection bridge. This momentum set the stage for something larger. The Tuono wasn't just competing, it was leading, and the naked arms race was officially underway. As rivals scrambled to catch up, the Tuono's next chapters revealed how a bold experiment could permanently reshape the DNA of the naked superbike market. As the Tuono V4 gained traction, Aprilia's gamble began to look less like madness and more like foresight. The motorcycle wasn't simply carving out a niche. It was setting the tone for what the naked superbike class could become. That reality forced competitors into a corner, either evolve quickly or be left behind. Microstory. Ducati's counterpunch. Ducati had always been a leader in emotional motorcycles, but when Aprilia unleashed the Tuono, their monster line suddenly felt tame in comparison. The response came in the form of the Street Fighter, a machine designed to reclaim dominance. While powerful, it leaned heavier and less nimble than the Tuono, showing how Aprilia's compact V4 had an agility others struggled to replicate. Ducati eventually refined its approach, but the urgency of that shift was born out of the Tuono's disruption. Context digest. The naked bike market was in flux around this time. Enthusiasts wanted more performance, but regulations on noise, emissions, and safety tightened every year. Brands faced the dual challenge of making bikes exciting while complying with new rules. Aprilia's electronics strategy gave them an edge. Instead of cutting power to meet regulations, they harnessed it intelligently. This allowed the Tuono to deliver thrills without crossing legal boundaries, and it set a new benchmark for how electronics could redefine rider confidence. Microstory. KTM ups the ante. KTM's Super Duke had a reputation for brute strength, but the Tuono's finesse highlighted its shortcomings. In response, KTM doubled down, creating the 1290 Super Duke R, a machine marketed as the Beast. Yet even then, riders debated whether it matched the Tuono's blend of power and precision. KTM offered rawness, Aprilia offered refinement wrapped around rawness. The battle lines were drawn, and the naked class became one of the most competitive showdowns in the motorcycle world. Reflection bridge. The Tuono didn't just shape rival machines. It rewired the expectations of riders themselves, who began to demand a new level of exhilaration. Micro-story. Riders who switched, testers who hopped between the Tuono and its rivals often returned with the same conclusion. Aprilia's creation felt the most complete. It scared them, yes, but it also gave them confidence that they could dance on the edge of control. That sensation created loyalty. Many who bought a Tuono became repeat Aprilia customers, not because it was the easiest machine to live with, but because it offered something visceral that few others could. Context digest. Even in the US, where Aprilia didn't have the sales footprint of Japanese giants or Ducati, the Tuono carved out cult status. Dealers saw enthusiasts travel across states just to secure one, and online forums buzzed with stories of its addictive personality. Its limited availability in certain regions only added to its mystique, reinforcing the sense that owning one was an initiation into a rarefied club. Microstory, BMW joins the chase. BMW, known for precision and engineering excellence, entered the fray with the S1000R. Derived from the ferocious S1000RR superbike, it carried a similar formula to the Tuono. Yet, while BMW's machine impressed with speed and German thoroughness, riders often described it as clinical compared to the Tuono's wild charm. Aprilia's advantage lay in emotion, something harder to quantify but impossible to ignore. Reflection bridge. By now it was clear. Aprilia had forced an arms race, but the real story was what this race revealed about the future of motorcycling. Microstory. Technology as a weapon. The Tuono's early adoption of advanced electronics foreshadowed a shift that would touch every corner of the industry. Features once considered luxuries, traction control, customizable riding modes, electronic suspension, became expected. Aprilia wasn't the biggest player, but its innovation made it a trendsetter. In hindsight, the Tuono wasn't just competing in the naked class. It was writing the playbook for modern superbikes and nakeds alike. Context digest, the numbers told a clear story. Even as rivals gained displacement or horsepower advantages, the Tuono's lap times, road tests, and rider feedback consistently placed it at the sharp end of comparisons. Reviewers frequently concluded that while other bikes were faster in straight-line sprints, few matched the Aprilia in overall feel. That combination of measurable performance and intangible thrill kept it a perennial reference point. Microstory, the riders who pushed boundaries. On track days, Tuono owners discovered their naked bike could hang with full-fared superbikes. While wind resistance limited top speed on long straights, the V4's torque and Aprilia's chassis balance gave them an edge in corners. This blurred lines further between categories. Riders realized they didn't need a full superbike to experience track-level performance, an insight that rippled through the market as more riders sought versatile machines. Microstory, the price of power. Owning a Tuono, however, wasn't without challenges. Higher maintenance needs, premium parts, and Aprilia's smaller dealer network sometimes frustrated owners. Yet these inconveniences rarely overshadowed the joy of riding it. If anything, they reinforced the sense that the Tuono was a special machine, one worth the extra effort. That willingness to accept imperfections highlighted just how deeply riders connected with it. Reflection bridge. All of this pressure, competition, and evolution led to one undeniable outcome. The Tuono V4 permanently shifted the naked class, creating a legacy that would extend well beyond its own production years. The real impact of the Tuono wasn't just measured in bikes sold or awards won, but in how it rewrote the identity of an entire category, a story that continues to shape the motorcycles we see today. The Tuono V4's influence became undeniable as the years passed, and its reputation grew from bold experiment to enduring icon. What began as Aprilia's gamble evolved into a lasting benchmark, changing not just motorcycles but the culture surrounding them. Microstory, a machine that aged with grace. While some motorcycles fade into obscurity as newer models arrive, the Tuono V4 maintained relevance. Each update refined electronics, sharpened handling, and improved comfort slightly, yet never dulled its core character. Owners found that a Tuono from years prior could still thrill as fiercely as the latest competitor, proving its design was not just ahead of its time, but timeless. Context Digest. In the wider market, naked bikes became more than stripped superbikes. They became symbols of a new era, machines that delivered world-class performance without the aggressive riding position of race replicas. The Tuono's formula showed manufacturers that riders didn't have to choose between spine-crushing ergonomics and thrilling speed. This insight created a surge of versatile yet extreme motorcycles across brands. Micro-story: the legend it meets. Across Europe and North America, Tuono owners became storytellers. At bike nights, the Aprilia often drew crowds not just for its looks or exhaust note, but for the reputation that preceded it. Riders who had never thrown a leg over one still spoke of it with respect, as if it carried an aura. That mythology fueled desire, making it more than a motorcycle. It was a conversation starter, a symbol of daring. Reflection bridge. The Tuono's story, however, is not just about the machine itself, but about the effect it left on everyone who experienced or even encountered it. Micro-story. A community shaped by adrenaline. Online groups, forums, and social gatherings around the Tuono revealed a shared bond. Riders compared notes on settings, exhaust systems, and track adventures, but what connected them most was the shared thrill of taming a machine on the edge. The Tuono built a community not through sheer numbers, but through intensity, binding owners with the knowledge they had chosen something less ordinary. Context Digest. For Aprilia as a company, the Tuono reinforced their identity as innovators. Even without the sales scale of Japan's giants or Ducati's marketing muscle, Aprilia proved it could dictate terms in a competitive space. The Tuono was a halo product, not necessarily the brand's biggest seller, but one that showcased capability and vision. Its success elevated the brand's reputation worldwide. Micro-story. Passing the torch. As new generations of Tuono arrived, older riders handed their machines down to younger enthusiasts or kept them as prized possessions. Many spoke of the bike as a milestone in their riding journey, a marker of confidence and skill. For those who experienced it, the Tuono wasn't just a chapter, it was a turning point, a motorcycle that changed how they thought about performance and control. Micro-story: the sound of a generation. Ask any rider what lingers after a Tuono passes, and many will mention the exhaust note. That V4 soundtrack became as iconic as the machine itself, a rolling symphony that captured the essence of speed and danger wrapped in beauty. Even in an era moving toward electrification, riders recall the Tuono's voice as one of the most unforgettable sounds in motorcycling. Reflection bridge. The Tuono's legacy reaches beyond Aprilia and beyond its class. It became proof that sometimes the riskiest ideas have the greatest staying power. Context Digest. Today, every major manufacturer's naked flagship bears the marks of Aprilia's influence. Ducati refined its Street Fighter, KTM doubled down on its Super Duke, BMW polished the S1000R, and even Japanese brands brought new ferocity to their offerings. Each of these advancements traces back to the shadow the Tuono cast when it entered the scene. That ripple effect underscores its lasting impact. Micro-story. Beyond the numbers. The Tuono never needed to outsell rivals or dominate every chart. Its strength lay in how it made people feel. Riders walked away from test rides wide-eyed, reviewers struggled to balance praise with caution, and competitors reluctantly acknowledged its dominance. That emotional fingerprint is the real measurement of its success. Micro-story. Facing the future. As motorcycling approaches an electric horizon, the Tuono V4 stands as a reminder of the visceral thrills combustion can deliver at its peak. Enthusiasts often cite it as one of the last true icons of the petrol era, a motorcycle that combined technology and rawness in perfect measure. Whether or not an electric successor can match its spirit remains an open question, but its influence is already cemented. Reflection bridge. The Tuono V4's journey closes a loop. From daring idea to enduring legend, it stands as both a product of its time and a definer of the future. In the end, Aprilia's naked superbike proved that fear and thrill can coexist, that risk can become reward, and that one motorcycle can leave a shockwave felt for generations of riders and manufacturers alike. The story of the Aprilia Tuono V4 is one of risk, reward, and resonance. From its earliest days, It challenged the notion of what a naked bike should be, daring to transplant a superbike heart into a stripped, upright chassis and trusting riders to handle the consequences. That gamble could have backfired spectacularly, but instead it gave birth to a machine that stood apart, one that was never the most common, but almost always the most talked about. What makes the Tuono remarkable isn't just its engineering brilliance, though that is undeniable. It is the way it blended brute strength with precision, pairing a furious V4 with electronics smart enough to make it usable on real roads. It demonstrated that technology could enhance, not dilute, the riding experience, and in doing so, it set the tone for an entire generation of motorcycles. Just as important is the culture it shaped. The Tuono became a rallying point for enthusiasts who valued emotion over convenience, thrill over pragmatism. Owning one meant accepting quirks, service costs, and limited dealer access, but in return came an unmatched soundtrack, endless torque, and a ride that could raise goosebumps on every journey. For many, that trade-off was not just acceptable but desirable, because it made the Tuono feel personal in a way mass-market machines rarely did. Its competitors respected it because it forced them to elevate their own offerings. Its fans loved it because it made them feel alive in ways few bikes could. And its legacy endures because it embodied a philosophy that motorcycles are not merely about getting from place to place, but about how that journey makes you feel. Today, as the industry faces questions about the future of combustion, electrification, and shifting rider expectations, the Tuono V4 remains a reminder of the magic that happens when a company dares to build a motorcycle without compromise. It represents the height of an era where performance, sound, and sensation were prioritized, and it leaves us with the challenge of imagining how that spirit might live on in the machines of tomorrow. So the next time you hear a V4 scream in the distance, know that you're listening to more than just an engine. You're hearing the echo of a gamble that paid off, a motorcycle that frightened competitors, thrilled riders, and carved out a permanent place in the story of motorcycling. Thanks for riding with us on Boost Bureau. See you next time, automotive enthusiasts.